without further ado, I would like to welcome our three parents who we thought to invite to talk about this. First, we have Amy Graver. Amy, if you would introduce yourself, please.
Sure. I'm so thrilled to be with everyone tonight and talk about this important topic. I'm Amy Graver. I'm the mom of 4 kids, Connor, Claire, and twins, Lauren and Emma. Lauren was diagnosed with a pediatric cancer called rhabdomyosarcoma when the girls were 7, and she died just days after their 10th birthday.
Thank you, Amy. And Matt?
Hey, Matt Goldstein. It's a tragic privilege to be here with all of you tonight. I'm the father of 3, Javi, Kaya, and Ezra. Javi, our oldest, was diagnosed with infantile Tay-Sachs disease in December of 2019. She was about 15 months old at that point. And lived for another 13 months before she passed away in January of 21. And we try to keep her close every day.
And Ashley?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. I am the mother of 3 children. My daughter Rosa, my son Leo, and my baby Vigo. Vigo was born prematurely in January of this year, and he, after he was born, he was diagnosed with trisomy 5p, which affected every cell of his body, but deeply affected his ability to breathe. And we took him home on hospice, and he lived for 6 months and 10 days with us and passed away on July 18th.
Thank you for being here, all 3 of you, and thank you for being here, everybody. It is the case, I will name, that Amy, Matt, and Ashley are bereaved parents, and we will be talking about what it means to show up for people who are bereaved. But the first part of our conversation is going to be to talk with these parents about what are the powerful ways or most helpful ways that people showed up for them during their children's lives. So I guess I'll start with you, Amy. We'll just keep going in this order because it's how I see you. Amy, what were some of the most helpful ways? Well, I just want to flag, Amy lives in Chicago, Matt lives in Boston, and Ashley lives in Ann Arbor, Michigan. So we have geographic distribution, although I think that has absolutely nothing to do with how people show up. I just want to name it. Amy, would you tell me, please, or share with us, what were some of the most helpful ways that people showed up for you and your husband and your family?
Sure. So I think some of the most helpful ways were people who were very directive with their help. For example, can I bring dinner by tonight? Can I drive the girls to band tomorrow? Can I take them to band for the rest of the season for you? Things like, how can I help you, felt like a burden to me. I don't know how you can help me, but when you show up, you show up in the winter and you've shoveled my driveway, that's amazing. When you've dropped off frozen pizzas and some cupcakes that we can have any night, that's amazing. Just not having it be open-ended, but having a specific task that you've taken off my plate and made my day easier, that was the most helpful.
And can you just say, is that because the open-ended question puts the burden?
Yes, the open-ended question felt caring, but it put the burden back on me for me to decide what can I let this person do, what can I it felt like too much. I didn't know from day to day if we would be in the hospital for the day, in the clinic, in the hospital for a week, if Lauren got an infection. Like the days were, very vague at the start of the day. I never knew how the day was going to go. So to have someone say, I'd like to pick up, I'll be going to the store. Do you need any, do you need groceries, or just to drop off things? We had a friend that started a meal train for us. And because we were getting food, quite a lot of food at the start of her diagnosis, and that felt overwhelming. My friend took it upon herself to start a meal train. And she asked me, she's like, what are the good things and bad things? I'm like, the meals are very helpful, but there's just too many of them. I feel guilty throwing out all this food. And so she said, okay, does 3 days a week sound reasonable? And so we decided on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I told her, I'm also like, sometimes I'm just overwhelmed meeting someone at the door, asking to see Lauren, asking how things are. Sometimes I just can't deal with it. So she said, okay, we're going to put a cooler at the door. You don't have to see anyone. They can drop the meal off. She asked people to put it in disposable containers, so I didn't have the burden of returning dishes to people. And just little things like that, it changed the whole dynamic. And they did this meal train for the entire 3 years that Lauren had cancer. And then they continued it for 6 or 8 months after her death, which was amazing. Then that was very helpful.
Those are some very practical tips.
Yeah.
How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think there's obviously so many ways people did amazing things. I think the biggest way, and this is by no means obviously an expectation, it wasn't in our case, but all of our siblings, we were helped out by COVID in this sense, but all of our siblings, my wife's parents, all relocated to Boston and rented a house down the street and just became part of our daily life, which was incredible and the most beautiful thing. And that really, in some ways, represented a response to Hobbs' diagnosis and to what we were going through, like just jumping fully in, living it right along with us, and embracing that entire experience. And that is like the biggest extreme, the biggest sort of full of heart, full of love extreme end, and obviously was transformative for us, and really sustaining. I think on the other end of the spectrum, no less impactful in some ways, but people who were far away or who couldn't be here or who weren't part of our daily existence, doing little things that let us know they were thinking about Hav, that they were feeling Hav in their day-to-day. Things like writing her name in the sand if they were at the beach and taking a photo and sending it to us, or ordering coffee at Starbucks and putting the coffee under her name. So, it would get called, Javi's name would get called out, and taking a picture of the coffee cup and sending it to us. Those things made it really feel like Hav was part of this much larger network of the world. And I think as a parent of a child who is going to die, or now who has passed away, that's all you really want. You want them to live on and exist as much as possible. So those are very, very little things that don't have to happen often, but are incredibly powerful, and were and continue to be really sustaining for us.
Thank you. And Ashley, just
well, I first just want to acknowledge we had an amazing group, amazing community of people that stepped up for us. And the person who could teach the master class on this is on this call. I just want to say, you know who you are, and thank you for joining and being here. But I agree with everything that Amy and Matthew have said, like the littlest things, even just sending an email or a text that says, you don't have to respond to this. I just want to tell you, we love you. We're thinking of you. We're thinking of Vigo. We're following your story, or we care, or whatever. We're praying. Like those things seem really small and maybe insignificant, but they are meaningful. They don't ask anything of us, but they tell us that we're not alone. And so I'll say that I agree that those are very meaningful. And other things that are pretty, like, if you feel like you just don't have a way to help, maybe you're far away, you know, other people organize things like meal trains or even like a GoFundMe or something like that. And it's easy to just jump in and participate on that. And, you know, I haven't been able to thank everyone whose names showed up on those things, but I know who they are. Like I saw your name and it meant something to me. That was a message to us that you care. And we felt that. And then of course, you know, there's the big things like the friend who organized the meal train and who communicated with everyone who signed up to the meal train. She would sort of send updates occasionally and let everybody know what was going on, which just took all the burden off of me. Like people could reach out to her to ask her like the questions that I couldn't answer. And that was a burden on my friend, but it was incredibly helpful. I just can't even say how helpful it was. We got our diagnosis when Vigo was born premature. And when we got our diagnosis, we still didn't even have the nursery set up yet because we were 8 weeks early. And so then we found out we were going to go home on hospice, and I could not wrap my head around, I wanted to take him home to a beautiful place, but I couldn't decorate the nursery. I couldn't put one thought in front of the next, like, and so my friends all went over, they completely decorated the nursery. They stocked it for me. They created an Amazon gift list that, so people could just like buy things on Amazon and send them to the house, like all of our supplies that we would need. And it was just very comprehensive, and amazing. And the one other thing that I really liked was when someone would text and say, okay, I can come on Tuesday from 11 to 1, like, you know, say yes or no, basically. And I would say yes. And then they would show up and they wouldn't be like, you know, crying or wanting me to do anything. They just say, if they saw dishes in the sink, they do the dishes. They go down and check for the laundry, or they would just be like, I'll hold the baby, you take a shower, you know. And I often would screen my calls. I just wouldn't pick them up. Like I couldn't pick up the phone. It felt very burdensome. But I found that when someone was there sitting in my house, even if I wasn't my intention to talk, or if I felt like I didn't feel like I could, then all of a sudden I would just be able to pour out my heart, and I would have a listener, like a person there. And that happened so many times. And I'm just so grateful for all the people who came and held Vigo and held that space for me. And what they did was just like showed up, you know, so.
I think it's an interesting distinction you make between having to talk to somebody on the phone and talking to somebody who's in your physical space. And that sounds really right to me, that it's different than, we're all kind of sick of the phone, but somebody who's physically, literally in your space, which is not easy for a lot of people because they're not physically near. But for those who could come, even just to sit and be a warm, loving presence, that is different. That is different. It really, the physical presence is different than the phone call. mean, the phone call is better than nothing, but I am really, I hadn't thought about it, and hearing you say that, I really get it. I can remember a few things when my daughter was in my daughter's life about this showing up, and one of them was a friend made this was in the days of CDs, mixed tapes, but on CDs. That doesn't happen anymore, but we didn't have Spotify then. And a friend made a mixed CD that we would play and play and play. We loved that. And another friend made a blanket. And those were two gifts that were beautiful and easy, that I really felt their presence there. That having been said, I know from Amy that it's possible to give gifts that are not helpful. So Amy, this is the segue to, what are some things that people have done that with all beautiful intention? So, yeah. But we're not, just to remind, like, here's how good intentions cannot necessarily work out.
Yeah. So my daughter Lauren she's my pickiest eater out of anyone. Like, buttered noodles is about as dangerous as she's going to go. So, and the chemo made her stomach very upset. It really changed her taste in foods. Like, she never had chocolate again. Like, chocolate just grossed her out after chemo, and just a lot of just weird tastes. So anyway, someone one day dropped off a gigantic bag of ginger. Like, I think it's more ginger than I've ever seen, maybe than the whole state of Illinois eats. I don't really know, because I don't really eat a lot of ginger. But this person, like, it was raw ginger, I guess. And I was supposed to, like, grate it or grind it or something. And I was supposed to make some sort of tea or broth. I'm actually not exactly sure what I was supposed to. I know I was supposed to, like, make it into a liquid. And they said it's going to help with her nausea. They had a very close person who had cancer, and said it's going to help with her nausea, but it's going to taste disgusting, and she's really not going to want to drink it. So how do I get my 7-year-old to drink something gross to help her stomach, like, to tell her to help her stomach? And then I have to make it. I don't know how to make ginger stuff. And so that was it was loving, but I just didn't know what to do with the ginger. Mm-hmm. So that was one. I could go on if you need me to, Blyth, but.
You also had that huge art kit. What was that?
What's that?
To make a chain.
Oh, yes. Someone dropped off a craft, which sounds great because kids like crafts, but it was super complicated. They had seen it on YouTube or something, and the idea was to make a chain, a paper chain of every day that Lauren had cancer. That's the way I interpret it. And that sounds so scary. Like, if it was like the chains leading up to your birthday, they're leading up to Christmas, you take one link off and you're there. With cancer, you keep adding, and then it's this creepy long chain. And how, like, it just, like, I saw it and she described it to me, and I thought, I cannot give this. I can't give this to anyone. So I just said, hey guys, here's some fun paper, color on it. You don't have to. And I just kind of tossed the ginger out before that, but like I was getting braver about my litmus test. Does this add stress or bring value? And so I decided the paper brought value to do whatever you wanted with it. The gift did not bring value to do what the person intended me to do with it. I just changed it and made it into something and took off all the expectations with it.
Matt, are there ways, Matt, that some good intentions backfired that you?
Yeah, I think in the personal context, Javi is our oldest, and we had a fair number of friends who were having kids around the same time, and a lot of times they would want to come by with their kids or go to the park, or go have a picnic somewhere. And being with normal developing children was impossible. And that felt like almost offensive in some ways. Like it was so painful to think about doing that. So I think that's one that cuts pretty deep. But I think to sort of dovetail on what Amy had said earlier, the question of like, what can I do to help, or, tell me how I can help kind of thing. There were, with the best of intentions, there were a lot of times that people were asking those kinds of things of us. And there's just no bandwidth to manage that kind of thing. I mean, like we could barely figure out how to get through our own day, let alone schedule and arrange your day for us, So I think that also became pretty burdensome and irksome.
Matt, did you, when with the friends who asked if they could come over with their child or let's meet in the playground, how would you answer this? Would you just not be able to do it, or did you provide feedback in a way? Like, what did you say?
Yeah, I think also sort of following or echoing what Amy said, there was a progression. I think initially it was maybe avoidance or, sort of like politely declining, coming up with an excuse. But I think at some point we realized generally that we had to stop accommodating, and that we really had to like defend what was best for us and for Hav, and like do that unapologetically. And so we would tell people like, no kids, like it's too hard. You can't bring them. And actually we had a big memorial for Javi last September on her birthday. And we explicitly, asked people not to bring their kids, because we knew that was just going to be too charged and too difficult for us.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Being gently direct.
Yeah.
Advocating for what it is.
Yeah. And sometimes not so gently, but I think ultimately like that was, it was really important to be able to do that. And in a way it felt like, that was one way we could parent Hav.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ashley, how about you? What were some ways that just kind of backfired or were not helpful?
I would, I agree with everything that's been said. Like, please do not make any work for parents who are caring for a child who is with a life-threatening illness. Like, just like, it's hard to maybe wrap your head around like what we're going through on a day-to-day basis. Like, just in general, you're grieving your child already. Your child's still there. And so all of that is already enough to sort of like cloud the mind. But then there's doctor's appointments, nurse visits, medications and treatments around the clock. We had to keep an eye 24/7 on Vigo. So we were also arranging like night nurse care. And then we were up half, we weren't sleeping. And I would just have like dozens and dozens of text messages that I couldn't follow, and important phone calls I had to make. And I just couldn't. Like, if you texted me and said, let me know if I can do anything to help, let me know how I can help, I'm like, I'm never going to text you back. And I appreciate the sentiment, but it's just not helpful. I know that you want to help, but that's, I can't tell you what to do. So I'm in agreement with those things. One thing is, because there was the CDs brought up, some folks actually sent me CDs too, which was very loving. And but we didn't have a CD player. So, if you're going to send somebody CDs, just like do you have a CD player? If not, I'll send one over, like with the CD. Like, don't make me buy the CD player on Amazon. Now I'm like scrolling through the thousands of CD players and I'm like, I can't do this. So just, you know, that kind of thing. Just think that through. And then, you know, I think like the other thing that was sort of unhelpful, and not that many people did it. I would say one thing is a few people I think didn't ever reach out a single time. Like they ghosted, like dramatically, people we were very close to. And that actually hurt. It really hurt because as much as I know, and I've told myself over and over, these people, they care, it's just too hard. It's too hard for them to face this. It still feels like almost like you really don't give a shit, you know? And so I would say if it's really too hard and you really don't know what to do and you can't handle it, just send that one text. I'm thinking of you. I love you. I'm so sorry. That's all you have to do. But don't be the ghost. You don't want to be the ghost. Yeah.
Hey, Blythe, can I add to that for a minute? So I also, similar to Ashley, I was surprised. People who I expected to be there for us, people we were close to, could not, and sometimes were not. And people on the other side that surprised me, and I didn't think they would be there, came. So Lauren's child psychologist described this to me as that Dana and I and Lauren were in this really tight circle, this ring, this like ring of pain. And then there was concentric circles outside of that. And the people that we could trust to show up for us were in that first ring outside. You know, my neighbor who did the meal train, a family member that I could count on not to burden me, but I could send all other family members to this person when they all had this idea to help us. Or, you know, a friend that I could say, I don't have the girls' social security cards and I'm going to need this for our Make-A-Wish trip. Can you contact Social Security for me? Because I meant to do this 7 years ago and I didn't, and I could rely on that friend. So the rings got, you know, progressively there. And I had to get okay with some of my close friends were in these way outside rings that were never going to be helped, never going to be able to show up for me like I needed. But I also had to recognize and kind of like the amazement of the people who were able to stand in our close ring. And kind of to Matt's point, when people were like asking to help that in ways that didn't feel helpful, I felt okay and empowered to, like, you guys don't get it. You're not in my ring. You haven't been in the rings. You're not in the first ring. You're not in the second ring. I have to say no to you. You know, when you can show up and be in the ring, then I can help you. So that concentric ring theory kind of resonated.
Really helpful.
Just one quick thing on that I thank you so much for that image, because that's definitely our lived experience too. And one thing about I was in such a fragile emotional and mental state that people who were outside of those like very inner rings, it took too much effort to actually, even if they wanted to talk to me and I knew they did, there was so much to catch up on.
Yeah.
There was so much emotion on their end that they hadn't expressed. And there was just so much to catch up on. I couldn't ever get there. Like, I just didn't have the bandwidth to do that. So it's like the people who walked through the whole fire with you, they didn't have to say anything. Like, they could show up to help, and maybe you could even have a moment of levity with them in that, you know, because they're walking the whole experience with you. So I would say, like, if you're privileged enough to be in that inner circle, there's beautiful things you can do for your family and friends. And if you're on the outer rings, that's okay too. You can do other things, right? You can like send the text or the email or the meal, and it's okay, you know?
Yeah. Blythe, one more topic that I wanted to bring up is just like the impact to siblings. So
Thank you.
people would drop off gifts for Lauren. And so Lauren's just the thing she craved was to be a normal kid. And she's getting all this attention for having cancer. And my other kids are desperate for attention because the first thing people say to them is, "How's Lauren?" And they don't even recognize them. And so it's really like if somebody can pay attention to your other kids while you care for your sick kid. If someone, like, if they know you're going to be in the hospital or the clinic and someone says, "Hey, I'm going to swing, if you're in a clinic this week, can I swing by and take, Claire out to dinner? Or can I take Connor, I sent Connor a gift card for gas, or I sent, whatever that is." That was really helpful because they're craving it. So an example is a neighbor sent me an email, very well intentioned, and said, "I would love to make a Halloween basket for Lauren. What are her favorite candies?" So my kids all love candy. And so I just responded and said, we really celebrate things like this as a family. And here are some of my kids' favorite candies. Like Lauren wasn't really going to eat anything, but here are some of my kids' favorite. We would love, this is a lovely idea. Here's how you could make this wonderful and customized or special for us. Like, here's the things they all love. And so, like, kind of changing that. When someone in the hospital dropped off this big gift basket, Lauren had a lot of stuff, and Emma was feeling really left out as her twin. And so I made up a story and I said, they said that this is she's like, "I bet that's for Lauren." I said, "No, actually, they said that this is a twin gift. Like, they knew Lauren had a twin, and this gift goes to you today." And Lauren's eyes got big, like, this sounds super suspicious, but I was like, "You have enough, friend. You're going to be okay." And I was like, "Emma, it's all yours," and just gave her the whole present because she needed that. And what was wonderful was like agencies and charities that recognize that. There's one here in the Midwest called Cal's Angels, and your child gets a wish, but the siblings are included in that. There was when Lauren had radiation, she got to go in a prize room every week and pick a prize. And Emma came with every week, and Emma got a prize. They recognized and were sensitive to that and allowed her to get the same, like, she was going through just as hard of a time, especially as a twin, but she got that too. So if people are looking for things to do and they're not quite sure, like, pay attention to your other kids, like, send teenagers a gift card, like, just take a junior high kid out for ice cream, or buy them like a cool shirt or something, like, I don't know, things like that. That made a big difference.
So helpful. I mean, and so true. It made me remember when somebody came and took Taylor to the escapades, my older daughter. Like, I was like, "Oh my God, that's just fantastic." It was so helpful. And they just got 2 tickets. I mean, they just did the whole package that they knew we'd be home. What you're saying, Amy, is bringing up, though, something, that we talked about earlier when we were preparing for this, which is, to what extent did you find that you had to, but I don't mean this in a way that was burdensome, or maybe you would say it was burdensome, but the work, like, holding the space with somebody whose child is seriously ill is very difficult, because it is naturally sad to be in the presence of the idea that this child could die. The time in the home isn't necessarily, in fact, there's so much beauty in there that it's a gift that one can give oneself to show up. It is a gift that you give yourself when you show up for somebody else, as well as a gift to the person for whom you're showing up. But did you any of you, the three of you, and then we'll open it up to everybody else, ever find yourself sort of coaching your friends in a way that felt doable as opposed to burdensome? I mean, you were sort of coaching your neighbor when you said all our kids love candy. We would all love the candy. Thank you. And that's the message was delivered, and I'm sure well received. Are there instances where you either naturally it worked, or you actually sat people down and said, this is what we need, and this is how we need you to do it?
Yeah, Blythe, I'll jump in on that one. I think well, there are two things that come to mind for me. One is physically holding Hav when people came over. You could almost put them into two groups, like those that came in, like waved hi to us and just scooped her up and, you know, gave her kisses and just wrapped her up, which was the best thing. And then the other, I guess, end of the spectrum was people who were like afraid to get close to her, afraid to hold her, or, you know, nervous about doing something wrong. And I think over time we got more and more comfortable, like coaching or encouraging or opening up that possibility for them to interact with her, like in an intimate way. So that's one thing that comes to mind. The other thing, I mean, obviously the entire period of her life from her diagnosis to her death was, you know, overwhelmingly difficult, but there was also, like you said, a tremendous amount of joy and love and laughter and celebration, and beauty in every day. And, you know, I remember people would sometimes come over and it's like they expected us to be just shattered, laying on the floor, like inconsolable. And that was almost like there was this weird sense sometimes of like, that was how we were supposed to be behaving. And if we were like, you know, laughing or joking around or, you know, playing with Hav in a positive way, that we were like letting them down or like not fulfilling the expectation of what they were like walking into this tragic situation of. And I think also like eventually, and I think a lot through our writing and sharing a weekly journal and, you know, stories and photos and videos of Hav, with our broader community, that we did a lot of education around that too.
Yeah. I mean, I know from the videos that when we interviewed you for CPN, you and Myra, Matt, and we'll send a link to your videos, you talk about, and we also interviewed your brothers and sister-in-laws, and they talk about, and you talk about how you and Myra helped your family know how you wanted them to be with this sad thing. Not yeah. They didn't, but like, we're going to talk about the fact that this is sad. We're going to talk about the grief. We're going to talk about it. And yeah. You made it safe. And in fact, you didn't just make it safe. You sort of insisted on people being able to tolerate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a help to you, certainly, but I think to everybody around you, which is what you told them how you needed them to show up in that way, and you modeled it. Ashley, how would you, what would you add to this? And then we're gonna see if people have questions for you or observations of what others have done for them and how they've shown up.
So my quick add, I think, would be, we have a very robust neighborhood crew that our older children are part of, and we wanted as many people to experience Vigo as possible. For those reasons, we wanted people to know him and love him, because we just felt that gave his life meaning. And and it gave the whole journey more meaning for us. So we invited those children in, and all the children held him and got to dote on him and interact with him. And I think part of, our approach in talking to the kids was the same as how we talk to our children, to explaining these are all the machines that he's on. See, this one is the one that helps him breathe, and this one is the one that allows him to eat, and, showing them how all the machines work, and explaining that, he can't breathe on his own, he can't eat on his own, and he's got these, we would talk about what his condition and that he's going to have a short life, and just sort of put it out there. And then the kids would sort of, then that would all be out in the open, and then they would get to interact with him and like look him in the eye and hold his hand and see if they could get him to smile. And it all sort of like was like normal baby things, but we just kind of like, let's get all this out at first. We know, you're thinking about it, and ask them if they have any questions. And, that's the way we approached it with every kid. And one thing that my daughter said today, I asked her, I said, Rosa, what would you say is the most helpful thing for you that people did? And she said, I'm glad that all my friends were there. And for my older kids and their grief now, they have so many friends who like really knew their brother. So.
And Blythe, that reminded me of something that we did, but in the school community. So Lauren and Emma were entering 2nd grade when she was diagnosed, and we knew that kids, like her hair was falling out. We knew like kids had known them from, preschool and whatever, and they were going to see her look very different than she was when she left 1st grade. And so we kept Lauren home the first day of school, and she stayed home with our babysitter. And Dan and I met with Lauren's class and with Emma's class. We had Emma be a special guest speaker, and we talked to the kids about cancer. We used the word cancer. We said she was diagnosed. We said she's going to look different, but she's the same person. I made it a point to tell them that they could touch her and play with her and interact with her, that cancer wasn't contagious. We talked about the medicines that you take when you're sick, and sometimes they make you feel kind of like, the cough medicine makes you feel tired or something like that. And that the medicine that Lauren was taking was super strong because cancer is a super strong disease. And so the medicine was good, but it had really strong effects. Like I said, it's such a bummer. Like she's losing her hair as a result, and her stomach's upset. And they were like, oh. And then we told them to ask questions. And one kid's like, why don't you get a scientist doctor to help you? I was like, that's a great idea. We actually do have scientist doctors helping. And another kid said, my grandpa died of cancer. And it was just like, I'm sorry. And another kid was like, can I go to the bathroom? And we're like, sure. So but it was a way for them to ask questions. And then I wrote just a couple of sentences, and it went home in every 2nd grader's backpack that said, we talked to your child about cancer today. Like our daughter has cancer. You're going to see us. You're going to see her. She wants to be normal. Like, here's what we told your child. We talked about it in real but appropriate terms. And so we were teaching them. So Lauren came back to school the 2nd day, and I said, she has a new backpack. She wants to be your friend. She's nervous about her class, but also she's going to look different, and it's going to be okay. You can touch her, you can be with her. And so that helped people, just kind of helped kids deal with it.
That's very brave and sounds so smart and so hard. And what you're doing, what I think all 3 of you were just describing, is modeling for your circles what you could tolerate. And if you can tolerate, you are inviting them to tolerate it. And when they can tolerate it, they can show up in ways that are really helpful for you. Thank you.